Hello and welcome, adventurers! Today's story involves my first trek into my favorite module for the 5th edition of D&D, Curse of Strahd. In particular, it relates to the opening section of the campaign on my first romp into the mist-covered lands of Barovia. So, if you're ready for a tale of horror, sit back, relax, and grab a snack. I'm Lunar Phoenix, and welcome to D&D Storytime. Now, to preface things, I need to say that if you have never played Curse of Strahd, turn back now. This story contains spoilers for an aspect of the early game. If you want to go in blind, then skip this video and watch another one, with the spoiler warning out of the way. Time to get into the tale. This story takes place over the first 2 sessions of the game that began in 2018 around early to mid-September. Our group was a party of 4 that was coming from the Sword Coast into the Mists. Our group consisted of 4 members: Cassandro, our mercenary fighter; Flipper, our Kinku monk; Cloven, our Dusk Elf Grave Cleric; and finally, my character, Fi, the half-copper dragon wild magic sorcerer. This was before I learned just how bad of an idea the wild magic sorcerer subclass really was. Cassandro, Flipper, and Fi all came from the Sword Coast. Fi and Flipper were good friends from the university that Fi attended in Daggerford. She was going to do a study abroad. She told her mom that she was going to do magical zoology studies for her dissertation, but in reality, she was looking for where Barovia had been to hunt down the truth of the vampire legends she'd been reading about. Her mom, being the protective sort, hired Cassandra to keep an eye on Fi, and Flipper tagged along to keep her out of trouble. Boy, did they get more trouble than they bargained for. So, Fi, Cassandro, and Flipper set out on their journey and followed a trail left by someone in Cassandro's order called Rudolf van Richten. We come across a camp of Asani who encountered this Van Richten guy and spent the night with them talking to their leader, Stantimir. He tells us stories about the past of his people, speaking about how their prince had fallen into darkness, and they hope that we can help. We curl up for the night and fall asleep, and all happen to have the same dream that somebody with a similar accent to Stantimir is speaking to us about the tasks ahead. The next morning, we wake up in the middle of a road covered in mist. Needless to say, we were a little confused about what just happened and how we got dumped in the middle of nowhere. After a moment or two, we hit the road, as it's the only thing in the mist we can really see. As the 3 outsiders are walking, we meet up with an elf, Cloven, who's walking along the road too. He joins our group as we're heading in the same direction, or so we think. As we walk along, howling starts to periodically fill the air until a pack of wolves surrounds our little party. We fight off the wolves with minimal injuries and continue on. As we're walking, Cloven notices an odd scent in the air. It was the scent of decay. He follows it, and we follow him, to the dead body of a young messenger boy on the side of the road. On closer inspection, we find a note on the boy's body that he was carrying, and it also appeared from his injuries that he may have been mauled by wolves. After reading the note the boy was carrying, Cloven is more nervous, as the woman mentioned in the note, Irina, is an old friend of his. Hearing she's in trouble, we pick up the pace and head on down the path. However, as we're walking, it starts raining, And I'm talking about torrential downpour style rain. So we start looking for a place to wait it out. We eventually spot a Victorian mansion near the side of the road. We walk up to the house, and outside, huddled up, are two kids. The girl was called Rose, and the boy was called Thorn. We speak with the kids, asking them why they're outside and where their parents are. They tell us that their parents are inside fighting a monster in the basement. They also say that they're worried for their baby brother Walter, who's still inside. So, doing our best to comfort the kids, we tell them we'll go help their parents. Well, it was more that Fi kind of rushed into the house after we heard screaming coming from what we assumed was the baby's room, and her maternal instincts took over. Everyone else followed behind, much to Cassandro's annoyance. So we get inside, and the door slams and locks behind us, like any classic horror movie. We try to yank the door open, and it won't budge. As we start poking around, we notice that more and more, something is off. For example, eyes will randomly appear in scenes carved into the wall that shouldn't be there. We slowly start working our way from room to room until we hit the third floor. The suit of armor at the top of the stairs was playing possum. It whacks Flipper, and we go into a combat round. Combat ends with Fi melting it with her acid breath, and poor Flipper is unconscious. Cloven gets Flipper back up, and we start poking around the third floor until we hear the cries of a baby coming from one room. We peek in, and there's the apparition of a woman in the room. But when we get close, she just disappears and the crying stops. We cautiously poked around the room and found a secret passage to another place in the house. With the floor quiet for the time being, we decided to take a long rest. Yes, taking a long rest in a haunted house isn't recommended, but Flipper had taken a couple of good whacks and we were running low on spell slots. So we took the risk. When we woke up, we headed into the passage. It took us up to another floor that had 3 doors. One was locked shut and the other was open across the way. We hear the sound of children playing behind the locked door, and in the open room we find a servant's room stocked with books on the occult and a very creepy looking doll. Cloven decides to use detect magic to see what kind of madness is going on. He learns that the house is covered in conjuration magic, but not the furniture. Meanwhile, Flipper is messing with the lock on the other door. He just breaks the damn thing open, and the noises stop when the door opens, and we all cautiously wander in. A few minutes later, 2 ghosts appear in the room. It's Rose and Thorn. We ask them why they're in the house and outside it, but they don't seem to know what we're talking about, as they've been stuck in the room since the day they died. To which we notice 2 children's skeletons on the floor in front of us. They just want to finally rest, so Cloven and Fi offer to carry their spirits until we can put them to rest. We hope, with their help, we can finally get this place at peace. After being pointed to another secret passage, we head down into a crypt beneath the house. Down there, we find evidence of a cult worshipping some guy. We didn't realize it was Strahd just yet. We ran into some ghouls and ghasts we had to fight off, along with a door. Yeah, there was a door mimic down there. Cassandro fell into a pit trap as well and nearly died. We find another passage leading further down and come into this dungeon area that also has this big altar in the middle of a room with water kind of at the bottom. We eventually worm our way into the altar room and Flipper gets too close to it. This sparks something to go off, and these shadowy figures appear, saying, "One must die," repeatedly. We refuse and head for the door. Big mistake. Something rises from the far corner, and it comes chasing after us. We scramble into the little antechamber that was before the altar room, but it's still coming, and we're trying to slow it down. The thing on our heels is a gibbering mouther. As we're running for the stairs, poor Flipper gets stunned by one of the mouther's abilities, and it eats him. Poor Fi watches as her friend gets devoured before having to book it out of the house that's threatening to collapse. We make it to the third floor bedroom and try to use a rope to climb down. However, some of us flunk our climbing checks. Fi, yeah, it was me, and end up crashing into a pile in the mud outside. We watch as the house collapses and it turns into red goo at our feet. Fi was in shock. Cassandra was annoyed, but we found a stable nearby to rest up before hitting the road. So, when heading for Barovia, be sure to pack for ghosts, evil goo, and spooks, and maybe the occasional mimic, or else someone might just end up dead. All in all, the Curse of Strahd module is one of my favorites, and this little intro was a great setup for what lay ahead. But that concludes the story of my first experience with Death House. I hope you enjoyed that little peek into my first time running around the lands of Barovia. If you want more tales in that vein, let me know by leaving a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and perhaps subscribe for more stories in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time!